Hello, my name is Steven, and I'm going to give you a quick introduction into the RoboRealm application. Before we do so, let's go ahead and go to the website so that we can download the application. Within the website, if you click on the second link, or the download link, you should be presented with the download form. You can go ahead and enter in your email address here into the first field, and then press submit. It should reply back pretty quickly and actually send you an email with the download link. Go ahead and check your email, and hopefully you should see an email similar to this. The main note of the email is the link in the middle of the page, which if you click on it, it should relaunch the browser and download the actual application. It'll be pretty quick, it's only about 6 megs. Once the download is complete, go ahead and click on it and allow it to install. And for the most part, every setting is the default that you want, so you can proceed through pretty quickly. Once this is done, go ahead and close the installation, and now you're ready to run the RoboRealm application. You can do so by finding it in the Windows Start button and clicking on the RoboRealm application. The first thing it'll do is ask if you agree to our license agreement, which is pretty standard, so go ahead and say OK, assuming you agree with everything. Once that is done, the next thing that it asks is about contacting our licensing server. You need to allow for this in order for the application to run. It's just part of our security. So go ahead and click on Allow. Once that contacts it back to our licensing server, the RoboRealm application will actually run. And so now we're actually ready to begin working with RoboRealm to see what it can do. First, I'm going to increase the size of the window so that we get a better sense of what we're looking at. And you'll note the very first image that it loads is a pretty standard one that helps you to understand a little bit more about what the interface is. In the main center of the application is the image. And this image will be the one that you're currently operating on. To the left side here, you have many lists of different modules that are available to you to use within the application. And it's these modules that we're going to use to modify or change the image in the desired way. When we select these modules, they'll appear down here in the processing pipeline. And the processing pipeline shows you which modules you've currently selected and which modules the image is currently being processed into. But first, let's get a little bit more of an interesting image rather than the static one that comes up initially. And to do so, we want to enable our camera button to actually connect out to a webcam. The way we select that is to turn on the camera button and then press the option button, which brings us up a selection that allows us to select which camera to view. In this case, I'm going to select Microsoft Livecam Studio, but we have a couple other options for any other webcam that you have installed. We'll go ahead and select that. And what we now see is the actual image coming from the webcam. And this is a live image here. As you can see, I can move my hand across it and we can actually see the image change within the RoboRealm application. But this image is a little bit small, so let's go back to our options button and click on the video format menu, and that brings us up a couple options that we can use to change the way the image is formatted. In particular, I'm looking for one a little bit larger. Let's go with a 640 by 480 image. So now that we have a larger webcam image, we can actually begin to do some interesting things. So let's go ahead and remove our logo and place something in view that we may want to actually detect. For example, a red ball. And this is one of the most primitive things you can detect because one can use essentially color to detect it. I'm going to use a piece of electrical tape to go ahead and hold that in place. So now, how would we go about detecting this particular ball? Well, the best and easiest way to do it is to work with color. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Search tab and type in RGB to get the RGB Filter. And this is again one of the many modules available to you that you can play around with. If I go ahead and double click on that, you'll notice a couple things. One is the image immediately changed to show the after effects of this module. And you'll also notice down in the pipeline that the module has been inserted in there so that we can keep a reference to it and bring it back up when we need to. The module itself is by default configured to detect a red color. I can always uncheck this and choose other colors, but because our scene is fairly low in colors, it's really only the red color that's going to be detected. And I can change the parameters in real time. Not much essentially happens in this particular case, but if I were to have other objects in there, that may be a necessary thing to do. An interesting thing to note is one's hand actually has a red color to it, and so detecting red within the image also detects my hand quite nicely. And we can see that the image is live and being processed live by seeing the movements actually take place in real time. So one of the questions then is, okay, supposing I take away this small ball and replace it with something a little bit different. I'll go ahead and uncheck the run button, and at any time you can do that to see actually what the video looks like now in its original sense. We'll go ahead and check the run button back on, and now we see that, well, we have still a red object, but it's not quite a circular one. So how do we go about tracking that? Well, we could go ahead and load up another module, in this case a center of gravity module, and what this one does is it'll actually detect and show you where in the scene the majority of the pixels within the image actually are. So if I go ahead and double click on that, again, that gets added into the pipeline, but it also shows us now the majority of the on or active pixels within view of the camera. We can press OK to remove the interface and actually play around now to see that the image is still live and our blue square essentially outlines those pixels that are being detected. We can go ahead and remove that object and place yet another one in. And we'll see that it quickly adapts to that particular size. But now we have a problem. Supposing we have two balls in there, what happens? Well, in this case, the two are detected versus the one. But supposing we only wanted the smaller ball to be detected, how do we go about doing that and getting rid of the influence of a larger one? Well, it takes a little bit more processing to do. And first off, we need to separate the smaller and the larger ball from each other. We can do that by going back to our RGB filter and increasing some of the parameters to reduce that connection between the two balls. So what I'm doing right now is increasing the minimum intensity, which basically means that darker objects are going to fade into the background. And we can see very faintly here that a division is being created between our small ball and our larger one. And so that's probably good enough. And I'll go ahead and switch on the color mask, which now shows us that we have a lot more noise within the image than is desired. So we're going to slowly increase the hue or color within the image to ensure that things that are not really red are just eliminated from the picture. And so now we can see we have our two red objects fairly nicely segmented. But if we go back to our center of gravity, it still gets confused between the two. So we need to do something else. So let's load up another module that does blob size analysis. And in this particular one, we want, say, the largest object and increase the minimum size that it will actually detect. And I'm going to scoot that up, and now we'll see that we have our largest object isolated from the smaller one. But we actually wanted the smaller object as opposed to the larger object. So if I increase the count to 2, we'll see both our small and our large object. And what we can do then is to increase the maximum allowed area to be that parameter that's just above the size of the smaller ball. And eventually that'll come in as we increase the size to reveal both the difference between the small and the larger ball. And we'll speed that up a little bit and increase the size. No, maybe not that quite large. We'll go down a bit. So it seems that our small object is about, say, 15,000 pixels in size. And now when we go down to the center of gravity, we can see that the smaller ball is the one that's isolated from the larger one. If we uncheck the run button, we can see that the two are actually still there. We're still in live video, but when we uncheck and check the run button, we'll see one versus the next. And if I move my hand in the way, now we'll see that the entire image is disturbed, because my hand also will be detecting the red object. But if I go ahead and pick up the red smaller one, we can see that it actually moves around fairly nicely. So that's a quick introduction into RoboRealm, and shows you how to, when you change parameters using the different modules, the image and end result can also change. And that concludes this brief tutorial on showing you how to detect red objects and isolate one object from the next given a secondary property like size. Thanks very much.